I taught Ricky that song. Ricky kept those drums perfectly tuned that way. And I didn't use them on every session, but the word got around very quickly. And Bones Howell loved those drums. He was a drummer himself. And all these artists wanted them. And when I would do, what was that record? The big record. Well, Cher did that Indian, it was an Indian record.
Okay.
Where I did the whole length.
Yeah.
And that caught on so good. Well, now all of the server guys wanted it. It sounded like the guitar. Now you could do it on drums. And that's really how that all developed. And I had 2 sets, and Rick was always 1 set behind me, 1 set in front of me, when I was what we call dovetailing.
Yeah.
Going from one session to another, one studio to another.
So for people that don't know about that, so Ricky would be setting up in one studio, and obviously you would go onto that studio, do your session, and you can move through the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And Ricky would be tearing down the one I just finished.
And how many do you reckon you were doing a day?
Oh, sessions?
Yeah.
Well, at one time we actually counted 7 sessions.
Right.
Now the average session was 3 hours, sometimes a half hour overtime.
Yeah.
Rarely more than that. If you were hired by Phil Spector, you expected 4, 5, 6 hours you're going to be playing straight. But he usually came out on a Friday night from New York, and he did the whole, almost all night. Because you can hear some of the underground tapes today where he's saying, here we go, count them off, here we go, 29, here we go, 30, here's take 30, let's go. There's a lot of tapes, and guys were just petered out. It was Friday night, you've been working all week. So, but that was part of the mystique and part of the love of doing what you're doing.
Coming back to your drums.
Sure.
Okay, so because the other thing that was unique about your kit was that, and I don't think anyone was doing it before this, was your toms were on like a rack system, and there was wheels on the bottom of the rack system. So why and whose idea was that?
Well, I'm sure it was all of our ideas. How are we going to get them in, get them out? Well, we'll put casters on them. Well, how do we do that? Well, Ricky discovered that he knew a lot of people in the movie industry, and electricians, and lighting people. And they had Klieg light stands that were like telescopes. Halfway up, another halfway up, another halfway up, they could go, to the skies. Well, Ricky found that the base was perfect. Some of them had wheels, some didn't. They would weld wheels on, so that there were 3, not spokes, but stands that came out of the main Klieg light stand with 3 wheels. If it didn't have wheels, they put the big casters on it, big wheels that were welded on. Pretty soon it was all painted over. It was beautiful. You'd never know. And then they designed the pole to go into the big hole, and on top of that pole there was a setup that was machined so that it could go to any angle you wanted. And now I don't forget who made that thing, but there was a tubing.
Yeah, because it was the first rack system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And each tom-tom had its own holder. And so it clamped on all the way down.
Should have had that patent, shouldn't you?
Exactly. And each rack tom, as we called it, was placed on the holder, and I could have any angle I wanted, perfect angle, for me to just go ahead and play. And that's what developed, and that was another thing that I try to tell drummers. if you invent anything, the tiniest little nut, bolt, screw, anything, get a design patent. You don't need an attorney. You just draw it up, write down what it's supposed to do, put it in an envelope, take it to the post office,
Send it to yourself.
send it to yourself as registered mail,
Don't open it.
and you're saving it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that in the early days. I mean, and the joke that I make is that had I had a patent on that set, on that rack set, I'd have over $100 in the bank today. Everybody in the world within weeks of that Ed Sullivan special, and I did the song Drummer Man.
Yeah.
Great song. With Nancy. And Nancy, in her gorgeous self. We did it in Las Vegas. We did it on all the records that we played. I generally always had that set of drums. And the word got out quickly to producers. They wanted those drums. And for me, it was great. It's part of my business is business. I got more money for having them. Sometimes they wanted to overdub them.
Yeah.
You got more money, etc., etc., etc. So that's really how we started and slowly developed them. And there were some pictures of me at that set of drums, at the timbali set.
I'm sure we'll find some in the minute for the video.
Somewhere, yeah.
Okay, now what I've got here is I contacted some of the best drummers in the world.
It's a small world, remember.
Well, and there's only a few, and the ones that wanted to send in a question.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to start off with Jojo Mayer. And Jojo Mayer has the question that he's been asking for a long time now, and I think you're the one to answer it. When, where, and by who was the first front bass drum head taken off?
Now here's a whole other story I could tell you about.
Yep.
I had almost a dozen sets of drums that my drum tech, Ricky, took care of. He always had them taken apart. He was such a great technician. He found any little buzz, click, anything. Knew how to wrap it so that there were never overtones being picked up by microphones. You hit a snare drum, as a drummer boom. Ricky had the flattest, greatest sounds. My drums had no overtones. Because he went in and took all the hardware off. He wrapped tightening all the springs. They never buzzed. Now when you have all those drums, they're all buzzing at the same time. Terrible overtones. Ricky fixed that. Drummers were literally coming from all over the world wanting to know what he was doing. Ricky often teched for Ringo, for Jim Keltner, some of the great drummers who wanted Ricky to be their tech. He was loyal to me and he refused to go anywhere else. Well, that's another story, obviously. But before very long, the drum heads on the front, and I don't know who the first one was to do that, but they found that by removing that drum head, the thing that I did was that I used to put a handkerchief on the back head and a handkerchief on the front head to deaden.
Yeah. What, on the outside of the head, or
on the outside of the
just
head.
hanging over it, or stuck to it?
Just
Hanging
stuck
on
to it
yeah,
with the masking tape,
Yep.
or duct tape as we
Yeah.
called it, that came out of the movies, people that did the movie stuff. I duct taped that stuff so that the sound, when your bass drum hit, boom, it wasn't boom.
Yeah.
It was flat right now, bump. And it was a great sound, because the first few times I heard that, I said, I love that bass drum sound, and I would be happy to give credit to whoever. I don't know who was doing it, But within weeks, every drummer was taking the front head off. There's a whole great story
So
that
what was
goes
the,
along
what
with
would you reckon that time frame was that was happening? Would you say that was in the 50s?
This was early 60s.
Early 60s.
Yeah,
Okay.
because Ricky had taken the front drum head off,
Yeah.
and as sharp as he was, you know, if you just unscrew the head, you get all that hardware dangling
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Ricky found a fan belt, automobile fan belt, and he put it around where the head would have been, just on the drum. And all that stuff, the claws,
Yeah. Wow.
they went into the fan belt,
Wow.
tightened down so nothing rattled. Plus all the springs that were
Yeah.
spring-loaded, those were all wrapped originally anyway.
Yeah.
So it was amazing, just amazing that he had that automotive sense, because he grew up partially in the automotive business, racing cars and being around race cars and so forth. God bless him, may he rest in peace. Ricky's right up here, I gave him a Lifetime Achievement Award. Thank goodness, he was just very special, very super guy.
Okay, so
So that's what happened with the bass drums.